Guys, what's going on? Path of Exile 2 just dropped the patch notes for patch 0.5, and my favorite build from last league has pretty much dodged all nerfs. The build I will be playing in endgame and transitioning to is going to be the Galvanic Shards Aura Stacker. I have a build guide and showcase on that already on my channel. It'll be linked in the description if you're interested in following that. But the build I want to go over in this video is going to be what I'm going to be playing and league starting to use as my leveling and to gear my character for that eventual swap in the end game. The gameplay footage that I have going on in the background is a grenade build, and I'm going to be going over how I played this, how I set it up, what I like to use, and what you can do to have a very smooth league start and a really smooth campaign, and just have a really enjoyable experience overall. There have been some changes in the sort of mid-campaign to how you're going to be crafting your weapon that's going to be carrying you into maps, and I'll go over all of that. I'll go over the POB, all the skills, and how exactly you basically want to set up the build. Some very important crafting tips, how you can get a really good weapon to essentially carry you from the middle of the campaign all the way into T15 maps, and everything along the way. So the gameplay you see in the background is just a standard grenade build. It utilizes pretty much all of the grenade skills in the game as you collectively unlock them as you progress through. Your main clearing skill is going to be explosive grenade. That's also supported by gas grenade and oil grenade, which provides exposure to enemies and then more fire damage. So that way the enemies just take more damage over time. Flash grenade is also really great if you're trying to speed through areas really quickly. That skill essentially stuns enemies immediately, so you're able to kind of stun, run through, and really progress through the campaign nice and quickly, depending on the pace you like to play the game. I will just kind of disclaim from the beginning, this isn't the safest build in terms of how tanky you are. You do a lot of damage as you progress through. You really do feel the damage jumps as you get, a better crossbow, and you start to add more auras that give you, a lot of increased damage as well as rage. However, you are pretty squishy. I'm not going to say that this is a, tanky build. You will die on this build, definitely. In the campaign, the major deaths that you will have will actually be from getting tripped while running, because this game has that brilliant mechanic where, if you try and play the game too fast and, someone throws a pebble at you, the developers are like, no, you must fall on the ground and look at the environment that we've created for about 5 seconds while all the enemies hit you. But that's just what it is. If you want to progress through, you kind of have to sort of balance, stunning enemies, sprinting through, get to the next pack, doing the same thing, and kind of, monitoring that throughout as you go through. But as you progress further and further and you get more auras, these really help your damage output, and it ends up being an incredibly smooth campaign later on. You can see the gameplay footage in the background. From Act 3 on, you're pretty much, have no trouble with any bosses. You're walking in, firing a bunch of grenades. Your Mirage Archer is helping you explode those grenades instantly, so you don't actually have to wait for their timer to expire. And the damage output that you have is just really, really fantastic. So with the gameplay footage now out of the way in the beginning, let's jump into the POB, and I will go over all of the aspects of the build and really try and help you guys have as smooth of a league start as possible. All right, guys, getting into the POB. In the notes section, I tried to make it as detailed as I could to give you, some tips and tricks and just some things that you should be aware of as you're going through. Give it a read, but all the major things I've kind of highlighted, and I will go through as we get to them in the POB. But just as just for the beginning, as we get into things, manage your res along the way. You don't need a lot of res for campaign. You can make it through on being like, 30-40% res. But once you get to maps, you do want to make sure that you are res capped. There is a guaranteed 4 link that drops from the league mechanic in Act 2 Buried Shrines, as well as from the first area in Act 3. There's a basket which is guarded by 2 rare enemies. So make sure you get those Lesser Jeweler Orbs if you haven't dropped any up to that point during the campaign. In Act 4, this area in Kanu, there is a guaranteed 5 link. You want to make sure you pick that up because it is a nice damage bonus or a really nice quality of life. You can give your explosive grenade a little bit more area of effect. So I'll leave that for now and let's get into the tree and the skills and the items and things like that. I do have loadouts enabled in the POB. So you can go through the loadout dropdown and I've sort of separated it by 3 or 4 rather kind of key breakpoints in the build that I think the first 14 levels and then from 15 to 32 right before you get your crossbow upgrade. And then again from 33 to 57, where you will then get your final crossbow upgrade until that will essentially carry you all the way to T15 maps. So starting at the beginning, it's just a simple pathing down into this wheel down here just to get some increased damage along the way. The skills that you're going to be using, explosive grenade and flash grenade are going to be the 2 that we are using primarily. You want multi-shot on both of them, as well as elemental armament for a little bit more damage. You can put mag area to get a little more area of effect on flash grenade or a little bit more damage depending on what you guys want to do. Frost bomb is really good early on because it will apply exposure to enemies. However, if you do not upgrade the gem level and you just keep it at like level 1 or level 2, this exposure will stop applying to enemies past level 20 or 21 if you upgrade the gem maybe once. So just be aware of that. Around level 20, you want to drop Frost Bomb because it will no longer work. War Banner is great for bosses. You build up glory, you place it down, and you just get a bunch of extra damage. Early on, in the Red Veil, you want to look for a tense crossbow. This will give you a big damage boost early on over the starting crossbow that you get, but you don't really want to spend a lot of valuable crafting materials on it. I would say just use transmutes and augs, but don't use any regals or exalted orbs on this. You want to save that for level 16, and I'll get into all the crafting steps as we go along. Other gear, just use what you find. Flat damage on gloves, and this is consistent throughout the entire campaign for all of your gear upgrades. Flat damage on gloves, cold, fire, or lightning is very good and physical as well as rings. If you can find flat damage anywhere, that is always going to give you a nice noticeable increase in your clearing as well as your DPS for bosses. Okay, into the next setup, you're just pathing down and you're starting now to pick up some grenade nodes. So we have a little bit of grenade cooldown here, as well as this one, which is really great. Grenades have +1 to cooldown use, and then you're going to path over and grab this reduced grenade detonation time. This just makes clearing a little bit nicer. You don't have to wait as long for the grenades to explode because around some point here, you will get your Mirage Archer, and I'll go into that and why it's so important. But for now, you just pick this up and then you start pathing down towards your grenade damage wheel over here, and you pick up some nice damage over there. For the skills, so again, we're just continuing on explosive grenade, flash grenade. You want to make sure you pick up your guaranteed 4 links and upgrade your gems along the way as you get higher level support gems, so that way you just gain extra damage from the supports that you're already using. At this point, you want to add oil grenade and gas grenade when you get it. Oil grenade now applies the exposure that will increase the damage that enemies are taking. And gas grenade is just another damaging skill. You shoot it out and it can ignite the old ground. It also explodes to do just a bunch of more damage there. Use, switch between these as they're on cooldown. If you run out of explosive grenades, use your gas grenades and vice versa, and things like that, along with your flash grenade, which provides a lot of stun and heavy stun buildup on enemies. Still War Banner that we're going to have here. You can add Herald of Ash as a second aura as you get spirit gems. The reason we are able to now start adding multiple auras is because when we ascend for the first time, we are taking, let me just find the ascendancy. Actually, I think it's at the bottom. Yes, our first ascendancy when we do the Act 2 trial is going to be a solid plan. Persistent buffs have 50% less reservation. So 2 30 spirit reserving skills now only cost 15. You also get a little bit of extra percent increased spirit there. So you're able to fit in 2 auras. So, whatever you like. Herald of Ash helps a lot with clearing early on, and War Banner is always nice on bosses for extra DPS. So at level 16, you are going to find this base, which is a varnished crossbow, and you want to save your crafting materials for this. And I'll go into the notes and just kind of go into the crafting a little bit more and why it's so important. Because a decent weapon, now it doesn't even need to be a great weapon, a good weapon can carry you for a long time. And the gear, just for how the game works right now, gear is a lot more important in this game than the passive tree. You do gain a decent amount of damage here and there on the passive tree, but a good crossbow and good gear, especially flat damage on gloves and on rings, can really make a difference and carry you a lot further than 30 points on the passive tree. It's just how the game is currently. Okay, so for crossbows, any flat added elemental damage or physical damage is good. Elemental typically is usually better at this stage than fizz, just because the roll ranges are a little bit higher. The best suffixes that you can look for are going to be levels to projectile skills. Is a little bit rare, but if you hit something that has +2, +3, then that's fantastic, as well as attack speed. So campaign crossbow crafting tips. Use your transmutations and augments on tense and on tense crossbow bases. If you have extra before level 16, you can do sturdy bases, but you really want to wait for the varnished crossbow at level 16. And the big break points in the crossbow bases that you want to be crafting on and investing your materials into are going to be level 16 varnished crossbow, level 33 bombard crossbow. This gives us +1 grenade projectiles. This just gives us, a ton of more damage because we're getting an extra projectile. Level 59 is a Cannonade crossbow. You do want to make sure that it's an item level 60. I'll get to that and why that is. And then at level 79, now deep into tier 15 maps, you are going to want to get a siege crossbow. So for your varnished and your bombard crossbows, this is pretty much essentially the same craft. You're going to find them on the ground and use transmutes or augments, or check the vendors and buy a base that has, at least one good added flat damage prefix. If you transmute or aug into an accuracy prefix, you pretty much do want to discard that unless you have a good prefix, a good suffix such as plus level to projectile skills. And I'll kind of show you some of the crossbows that I was using throughout my SSF campaign run. And one of them did have an accuracy prefix, but it did have a gem level suffix. So I was actually able to use it and it felt all right. If you have an essence that gives added flat damage, you do want to save these until you get, a good prefix that has flat elemental damage. So then you can make a rare item that has 2 good flat damage prefixes. If you don't have an essence, use a regal orb and hope that you hit a good prefix, or whatever you think will be good at that point. Exalt slam until you have 3 prefixes, because you always want to have the chance to slam into more added damage. If you have extra exalts, you can slam into more suffixes to try and hit projectile skill level or attack speed. However, usually it's better to save your exalts on league start, because you could just buy something off of trade that will likely be a lot better than something you can kind of craft with minimal amount of resources. So 2, 3, 4 exalts saved up once you get a bit later in the campaign or just starting maps can buy you some decent gear to rather than invest it into something that you're crafting yourself at this stage at least. If you have a decent crossbow that has 2 flat added damage prefixes, preferably not the lowest tier mods, something like T8, tier 7, 2 of those or something like that, feel free to go ahead and add runes. Usually storm runes are going to be the best, so added flat damage usually are going to be the best. There's some rare cases where if you have like really good fizz prefixes, you can use the iron runes that give you increased physical damage percentage. But unless you have like the top tier of fizz prefixes that are available on that eye level base, like flat added fizz and then percent fizz, usually the storm runes for lightning damage is going to be the best, because lightning damage inherently shocks. and that's just 20% more damage that the enemies are going to be taking. Okay, so that's a little bit about the early crossbow crafts. I'll get into the kind of late campaign craft in a second once we get into the loadout a little bit more. So this is right before now level 33 to 57. This is kind of, you're preparing for some big damage upgrades and some big swaps that you're going to be doing here. Just follow the skill tree for pathing. You can take these area damage and area of effect nodes here. You're kind of filling out the grenade damage there at the bottom. You can take the immobilization or damage to immobilized enemies up here, because for our second ascendancy through the Trial of Chaos, you're going to take suppressing fire. So you have 40% more immobilization buildup. So you're actually immobilizing and heavy stunning bosses quite easily. So this wheel here gives you a nice amount of damage. And then when you intimidate, they also take, I believe it's 10% extra damage on top of that. Take these nodes over here on the left towards Battle Trance at the end, or once you have all of this allocated over here, start pathing over to here to Battle Trance, and that'll be apparent when we get to the next loadout, because you're going to be adding Eternal Rage, which gives you a lot of extra damage because you're going to have full rage uptime once you do that. Getting into the skills, everything is pretty much the same. However, at this point, we are going to drop Herald of Ash, and you're going to want to use Mirage Archer and give your Mirage Archer Explosive Shot. What Mirage Archer is doing is specifically for bosses. As you fire out the grenades, they sort of sit on the ground and they have a detonation time. So they'll sit there, and then they'll finally explode. Your Mirage Archer with Explosive Shot, which has the detonator tag that you can see on the skill there. If your Mirage Archer shoots the grenades with its skill, it will blow them up instantly. So the damage uptime and the sort of, the DPS that you're getting from the Mirage Archer helping you explode those grenades is actually really nice. So Mirage Archer is a great quality of life. You don't have to run it, but you have a lot of spirit, because now at this point you should have, I believe, 60 in total. From what you get from Act, I believe it's Act 1, you get some spirit, and then in Act 3, you get more spirit. So you should have a total of 60 at that point, and you have more than enough to fit it in. You can see here there's some unreserved. For some reason, POB isn't factoring in the amount of spirit that Mirage Archer is reserving. But just know this will cost 30, and then the two other auras that you want. So you can do Mirage Archer plus 2 more. War Banner, you can keep Herald of Ash if you want, or you can just put some utilities on War Banner. So you can have Vitality 2, which will cost you 20 spirit in total for some nice health regeneration, quality of life, really whatever you feel like you want. You can use just as long as you have Mirage Archer on, and War Banner for the extra damage during bosses. That is quite nice. Okay, now getting into level 58 plus. So at this point, you should have 100 total spirit. You get to the interlude. I don't think you get any more in Act 4. I can't remember where exactly you get the last amount of spirit. It might be in the interlude or it might be in Act 4, but in the total at the end of the campaign, or at some point in the campaign, you get your extra spirit. I think it actually is in the interlude, because I have a note here at the top. Yes, do interlude area 3 in the glade first, because the extra spirit is nice for, you're able to put more utility gems into your auras, and you also receive the level 14 spirit gem that you need for Eternal Rage. Once you get to level 58, which is required for the level 14 spirit gem, you are going to add Eternal Rage. This gives you full rage uptime, and at the base amount, you get 30 rage. That's 30% more damage. However, we're going to finish pathing over into Battle Trance to get +8, +2, +2, +2. So that's +14 in total. You have 44 rage. So with the Battle Trance wheel allocated plus Eternal Rage, you're getting 44% more damage just from pathing there and turning on Eternal Rage. And you have the spirit in order to do it, because you have 50% less reservation that your gems are allocating. So a ton of damage that you're getting from that. It's immediately noticeable. and it feels fantastic to just flick on Eternal Rage at level 58, and you just, one shot everything, and the bosses are basically a joke. They just fall over at that point. So it's really good. Getting into now. So level 59. So level 58, you're able to turn on Eternal Rage. At level 59, the Cannonade crossbow base can start dropping. However, you may want to wait until level 60 areas, find a Cannonade base, and then you can start crafting on these level 60 bases. The reason for that is this, and I'll get into it. The big nerf that hit this build, or basically all builds, is actually in crafting this crossbow. Previously, or how it works now, the greater currencies, so greater orb of transmutation and augmentation, currently their minimum item level or mod level was 55. So if we stick that at 55 and we say we have a max eye level 60 crossbow base, what this would do is, as you would drop these greater currencies, you would save them up until you get a level 60 eye level base of the Cannonade crossbow. When you use them, you were guaranteed before the change in the patch notes that if you hit a flat damage prefix, you were guaranteed to get T4, which is a lot of damage. It's the maximum tier for the eye level that it can drop, level 60. So you can see for added fire, cold, and lightning being the best, it would guarantee T4. For elemental damage with attacks, it would guarantee T2, which is also a very good prefix. 100% increased elemental damage with attacks. It's a lot of damage. And it would, percent fizz is okay, but typically in the campaign, you want elemental damage. With the change, this has now gone down to, I believe it's 44. So let me actually reset this. And let me do 44 and max eye level 60. So what this means, now it's going to be a little bit more annoying, a little bit more difficult to craft a good crossbow in essentially one shot that will carry you from the campaign into T15 maps. And I will go back into the POB, into my items, and I'll show you the crossbow that I used in the campaign in my SSF run, which was in the gameplay footage at the beginning. This bombard crossbow here had basically no flat damage. It had a little bit of fizz, a little bit of lightning damage, had an accuracy prefix, but I did get lucky and it had level to projectile skills. This carried me up to level 60. It did start to fall off a little bit, towards the end, but it was more than fine to carry me to that point. The Cannonade crossbow that carried me from the campaign, the end of the campaign, to T15 maps was this, essentially. This is a T4 lightning damage roll. It was a essenced fire damage, which was wasn't even the greater essence. It was the one below, which I think gives like T6 fire damage. And then I got lucky and I exalt slammed into a little bit of extra fizz damage. I didn't even have, and I did this on purpose, I didn't even put in my second rune slot the highest tier of the storm rune to give me even more lightning damage. I kept it as I found one, and the other one was literally just a basic one that you find at the beginning of the game. So this could have been even more damage, but I didn't feel like I needed it. This had no extra gem levels on it. This was just the crossbow, and then what I had for the on the passive tree. I did get lucky in that I found some normal torn gloves base on the ground, and I used chance orb, and I ended up getting a painter servant. I divined it once, and I ended up getting a decent roll on the elemental damage. But this is probably pretty easy to self farm if you really want to spend the time. With the change to ritual in Act 1, Greythorn, the rituals now only give unique items, and this is a level 1 required. Like, you can put this on from level 1. So being a low level at the beginning of the campaign, if you want to sit and farm ritual, assuming it's able to be redone and you can, look at new windows and get offered different uniques every time, you should be able to self farm this pretty easily. If not, It's a very common unique. Any roll on the increased elemental damage as extra is fine to start out with. But this is also a very cheap unique on League Start. It shouldn't be more than like 4 or 5 exalts, like at the very beginning. By like Saturday, if you're taking a little bit longer to do the campaign, by Sunday, if you're still in the campaign, this should be a very cheap unique, and it gives you a lot of damage for this build. Painter Servant with a decent crossbow will carry you to T15 maps. T15 maps on this build are essentially free. As you get Atlas points and you start getting higher levels of bosses and they get exponentially more health, you do need a better crossbow, which I'll show you what I crafted into the end game and how you can craft that. And it's very, very easy craft. But this will carry you to T15 maps. So T15 maps are essentially free on this build. The more difficult part is like staying alive, but do 4 mod maps, push to T15s as quick as you want. If you die once, in the map twice, you get a couple respawns, you'll be fine. Just have a good time, and you don't need, a lot of damage on this build to do T15 maps. Okay, going a little bit back into the notes. So that was basically the change for crafting your Cannonade crossbow. We now cannot guarantee T4. You now have T6, T5, and T4 in the mod pool when you're rolling with greater currency. The greater currency has also been made rare, so who knows how many of them you're actually going to be getting. Might just be now you're using trans and augs, normal ones, on just level 60 plus bases. Hope you get lucky into like a T4 or T5 slam as a damage prefix, then save an essence. Essences now are going to be more common in the campaign from what the patch notes said. So that should actually help a little bit in guaranteeing a second good prefix. So you should have access to that. But, do what feels good. Pick up the bases on the ground. Don't be afraid to use your trans and augs on the Cannonade bases that are at least eye level 60. Eventually, you'll hit something good. I'm not going to say, I don't know how long it's going to take. Eventually, you'll find something usable, slap an essence on it, hit it with some exalts, hope you get another good prefix. And, like I said, you don't need a lot of damage to get to T15 maps. Upgrade your stuff along the way, and you should be more than fine. Once you get to level 79, when the Cannonade the siege base starts dropping, you can do a very, very simple craft that will give you a huge damage bonus. And it's very easy to craft, and I'll explain that to you guys right now. So this is the siege crossbow that I crafted in basically one shot, and it's a huge damage bonus. So this is a tier 2 flat lightning damage. This is an essenced fire damage for tier 4. And then the desecrated prefix that we can guarantee is increased grenade damage. So you're getting at minimum 100% increased grenade damage. The increased grenade duration, you don't notice it that much. You can swap into short fuse as a support for your clearing grenades. To just make it a little bit better quality of life. But again, your Mirage Archer is pretty much on full uptime and following you around as you dodge roll. So it will also help blow those grenades up a little bit quicker. So you don't really notice the increased duration that much. How you craft this. Now, there were no changes to the perfect tier of trans and augs. So if I reset this and I click on perfect, and my eye level is, let's just say 79. I believe you can still get tier 2. Yes. So tier 2 flats start showing up at eye level 75, but this base does not drop until level 79. So if you come into some perfect trans and augs, again, they're going to be rare. I don't know how expensive they're going to be. Might be worth selling them if they're worth a lot and just buy something on trade if the crossbows are, not too expensive. I don't know how meta the crossbows are going to be this league. Grenades got untouched in terms of the nerfs, in terms of damage. So Everyone seems like they're going to be playing Twister or Ice Shot. So leave it to, you know, those guys to just farm a bunch, find some good crossbows and sell it cheap to us who are playing crossbows. So see what the market says. If you can, you know, craft something and they're not that expensive, it's really easy. You basically slam perfect trend, perfect aug into a flat prefix. Lightning damage is the best. With the perfect currency, you can only get tier 2. So if you get a flat damage prefix, you're guaranteed for it to be pretty good. If you get lightning, you are in business, and it is the best one to get because with Painter's Servant, this damage gets converted. It gets split 3 ways into fire, cold, and lightning. So the more flat damage you have in terms of the high roll range, it's actually benefiting a lot. You slam into any tier 2 flat damage prefix, whatever you get. If you get, I would say wait until you get fire or lightning. Cold is okay, but it's the worst of the 3. If you get lightning, fantastic. Use a greater fire essence to give you a tier 4 flat fire damage. If you slam into tier 2 flat fire, use a lightning essence to give you tier 4 added lightning. Once you have your 2 prefixes, you're going to use 3 abyss currencies. And let me just go into, let me try and find it here, crafting. And let me go into the omens. So you're going to be using a preserved jawbone, desecrate on your weapon, and you're going to use 2 omens that need to be active in your inventory. Sinistral, oh, sorry, not that one. The one that guarantees here, these ones. Omen of Sinistral Necromancy and Omen of the Liege. This guarantees that we desecrate a prefix, and this guarantees that we get an Amanamu modifier. Why do we want an Amanamu modifier? Because if we go to the modifiers for our crossbows, Amanamu gives us the increased grenade damage. There are only 2 Amanamu prefixes that exist for desecrations. I think it's guaranteed that you see both of them. You for sure see one of them. I haven't tested enough to guarantee that you see both. But if you don't, just retry. Like, you'll see it eventually. It's a 50-50 if it's not guaranteed that both of them show up. But every time I've done this, I've always seen increased grenade damage. And unveil this, and you are good to go. I don't even think I slammed suffix. Did I even slam suffixes on this? I did. I slammed random suffixes on this with some exalts that I found, and they're terrible, but this crossbow will carry you for a long time. As you fill out your atlas and you get the points, as the bosses become more difficult, it will carry you. It will be fine. It's a very easy craft, and you can basically use that for as long as either you keep playing grenades or you farm gear to then swap to the Galvanic. I liked how grenades felt on my SSF run so much that I'm not going to swap to Galvanic until I have like better than the minimum viable gear for it. So I'm going to wait until I have, you know, a 5 socket Warrior Invictus that has spirit and life. Don't know how expensive that's going to be, but I'm totally fine with playing grenades just for how they felt. There was also supposed to be that new base type that was specific to grenades that they're introducing into the game called the Trothan Cannon, I believe. I didn't see it anywhere in the patch notes. I know there's that unique item that has that base type. So I am assuming that that base drops as a craftable item. The prefix or the implicit on it was basically it just, you can't load ammunition into it, but I hope there's something more and better to it. Like it has just a lot more, you know, base flat physical damage, because if there's no, you know, big upside to having an additional, other than having, you know, just can't load ammunition, firing 1 additional grenade projectile is way more damage than just having, you know, a fancy new base. So there needs to be something on that base that's actually, you know, sought after to justify using it over a siege crossbow, because you get an extra projectile, and we know how good extra projectiles are in PoE. It's just that much more damage that you're doing with your skills. Okay, so everything will be linked in the description, the POB and everything through there. Also the Galvanic build, which is essentially untouched. I'll touch a little bit now on what's changed. There were changes to two of the lineage support gems, Ratha's Assault and Arjun's Metal. One that gives additional bolts now, our ammunition now gives you one less than it did previously, so that's not that big of a deal. Rather than having five, we'll now have four. Not that big of a deal. The other one is, instead of granting a 100% chance to load ammunition back into the crossbow on a kill, it's now a 25% chance. You shouldn't notice this too much, because I believe that chance to load rolls on every single enemy that you kill. And when you swap to Galvanic and you have enough damage to basically explode packs in, one or two shots, it's rolling on each of those. So you shouldn't feel that much of a difference. Also, you're so fast on that build in terms of your move speed and how agile the character is. You just dodge roll to reload, and it's really quick because you have a really good movement speed and nothing slows you down. So you really shouldn't notice anything that different. Other than that, we got nerfed a little bit on the plus levels on the crossbow, but it's not that big of a deal. The build should still feel buttery smooth, super quick, really nice clear speed once you get there. I don't know how long it'll take me to gear before I want to switch over, because until you have enough damage, Galvanic can feel not the greatest to clear with. So you want to make sure you have a really good elemental damage crossbow before you swap over. And now with the Recombinator being removed, crafting a really good weapon or starting weapon for Galvanic is a little bit more difficult. So we'll see. I might end up just playing grenades the entire league and just scale it to infinity. I really have no idea. We're going to see how the league goes and go from there. But my plan is eventually to switch into Galvanic. Just to finish off, some general campaign progression notes. After you get the level 10 Spirit Gem from the Bog in Act 3 and you get to level 36 for your Mirage Archer, make sure you have 65 Dex in order to enable it and turn it on. If you need to move some passive points around, please do that. And yeah, I mentioned this already in the level 33-57 loadout. Take the points leading to Battle Trance last to prepare for your Eternal Rage swap. In the 58 plus loadout, drop Herald of Ash and use Eternal Rage and take Battle Trance. Do this immediately. Tons of damage. You're leaving a lot of damage on the table if you are not using Eternal Rage, first of all, and if you don't path to Battle Trance as soon as you turn it on. You should have 44 Rage at the bare minimum. Do not leave this damage off your passive tree. Make sure you have enough strength to do Eternal Rage. You need 103, so make sure you balance that out along with the 65 Dex for Mirage Archer. You don't really need to level Mirage Archer too much. You can wait until later on until you get some better gear. It really only just affects the duration, but with the support gems, the duration is pretty good and the cooldown is less than the duration, so it's basically full uptime. Balance your gem colors to ensure that you're getting 5% increased life from Gem Enthusiast, which is down here at the bottom of the tree, as well as crystallize immunities. Balance this because basically you're going to be balancing between Ignite Immune and Shock Immune, between red and green. Once you get into maps, if you roll a map and you want to do a map that has shocked ground, swap your crossbow shot gems to make sure that you have majority green so you're immune to shock. If there's an ignited ground map, switch it back to red so that way you have majority red so you're immune to ignite. You can kind of play with that as you want to whatever the scenario calls for. Putting the gems in your crossbow shot helps with this. You're not using crossbow shot, so anything that you see, I don't even think I actually have it in the POB. Use crossbow shot as just a, dump for gems that you need to balance for those two notables on the passive tree. Guys, so that's pretty much everything. A little bit of a long video. Hopefully I explained everything to the best that I can. If you do have questions, let me know down in the comments. And yeah, I hope you guys have a fantastic league start. Remember to have fun. This is a really fun build, really smooth build, but again, not the tankiest. So you'll learn to play it as you go. Try not to trip too much in the campaign. That's basically 99% of my deaths in the campaign are because I want to go fast and I'm sprinting and something throws a pebble at me and I fell and I have to stare at the ground. So unfortunately, that shit mechanic is in the game. Hopefully it gets changed at some point. But until then, enjoy, have fun, and I'll see you guys next time.